Shall we start, Sanjay?
Yeah, I just ensure that all the panelists are there or not.
Okay,
Ensure.
I'm already checking the names.
Yeah, hi, this is Sharadindu.
Hi, sir.
Hello. Hello,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Hi, sir. So I think we have two panelists already logged in. Professor Parthasarthi, I think, is yet to join. I don't think he has joined yet. I think. Has Professor Parthasarthi joined? Can we check?
Not yet.
Not yet, no?
No, he has. He has.
He has. So I'll begin. I think I should just begin. Yeah, I think he's joined. Okay. So hello to all. A very good afternoon to all of you. I welcome all of you to today's ISID Research Seminar, which is a part of the online discussion series that ISID has been conducting regularly over past about a year. We have a presentation today by our faculty colleague at ISID, Dr. Sanjay Malik, on the topic Adoption of Industry 4.0 Technologies in India's Startup Ecosystem. Before we proceed to the main presentation, let me take this opportunity to introduce our presenter for today and the three eminent panelists who shall be sharing their observations, comments, and suggestions on the paper with us after the presentation. Our speaker for today, Dr. Sanjay Malik, is an assistant professor at ISID. He has a PhD degree in economics from the Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram. His research interests are in the area of innovation and technological change, FTI, and labor economics. His doctoral work focused on examining the processes of generation of innovations in India's textile machinery industry. We are grateful to Dr. Sanjay for... I'm not audible, is it?
No, it's audible.
It's fine now. Okay. So we are grateful to Dr. Sanjay for agreeing to share his recent interesting research work on startups in our research seminar today. This paper attempts to analyze select IR4 startups of India from the specific perspective of the level and effectiveness of adoption of IR4 technologies, and also assesses the the presence of certain preconditions like the diffusion of ICT in the Indian context that is very crucial for any successful adoption of IR4 technologies. I'm sure this shall be a very engaging and insightful presentation on a very relevant topic that links the broader issues of integration of industrial development with technology adoption and innovation processes in a developing economy context. And we all look forward to hearing him. But essentially before that, I would like to introduce our three distinguished panelists we have specially invited for discussing the paper today. Our first panelist is Professor Balaji Parthasarthi, a professor at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, and is also the co-founder of the Institute's Center for Information Technology and Public Policy. He has completed his PhD from University of California, Berkeley, and has been associated with the IIIT Bangalore since 2000. His research interests have mainly focused on exploring the relationships between technological change, economic globalization, and social transformation. His works have explored the impact of public policy and firm strategies on the organization of production in the ICT industry, on one hand, and the impact of deployment of ICTs in various domains of activity on social relationships, especially in the context of the underprivileged segments of economy. His research work covers a wide range of issues like organization of production in the software industry, the political economy of e-governance, innovation policies and regional economic development, social innovation, MNCs and SMEs, and e-waste. This also includes his recent works on digital platform economy and the associated opportunities and ethical dilemmas. He has a number of very important and widely acknowledged publications on these mentioned topics. And also he has been a fellow at the prestigious Regional Studies Association, United Kingdom, and the Samuel von Pufendorf Visiting Research Fellow at the Pufendorf Institute of Advanced Studies, Lund University, Sweden. We are indeed very honored to have you on the panel today, sir. Thanks a lot for joining us. Our second panelist is Dr. Saradindu Bhaduri, who is currently an associate professor at the Center for Studies in Science Policy, School of Social Sciences at JNU. And he's also the coordinator of the Transdisciplinary Research Cluster, TRC, on Frugility Studies at JNU. He has a PhD in economics from JNU and was the postdoc fellow in evolutionary economics at the Max Planck Institute of Economics, Jena, Germany. Dr. Bhaduri held the Prince Claus Chair in Frugal Innovation for Development and Equity at the International Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University, Rotterdam, Netherlands, over 2015 to 17. His area of specialization are frugal and grassroots innovations, technological capability, evolutionary dynamics of technology and institution, IPR, and technology policy. He has published in a number of national and international peer-reviewed journals and is a known speaker on the mentioned themes. It's a privilege to have Dr. Bhaduri on our panel, and we are very thankful to him for agreeing to join us today and to discuss the paper. You're welcome, sir. Our third panelist for today is Dr. Anish Tiwari, who is presently a senior associate in Financial Services Advisory Team at PricewaterhouseCoopers Ireland, and he has recently completed his PhD in Strategy and Entrepreneurship from DCU Business School, Dublin City University. Before commencing his PhD, he has worked in Ernst & Young and has been a part of 2 technology startups in India. He was a VV Global Excellence Scholar at UCD Smurfit Business School, University College Dublin. He was awarded the European Commission's flagship Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions Fellowship for his doctoral research that focused on the acquisition and post-acquisition employment change at acquired Indian entrepreneurial firms. His areas of research addressed are mainly the startups, scale-ups, entrepreneurship policy, and issues of acquisition. He has published a number of significant articles on these topics, including a very recent article in Economic and Political Weekly that is focused on a critical review of the Startup India program launched in 2016, where he, along with his 2 co-authors, has discussed the merits, achievements, and shortcomings of the program from the specific viewpoint of addressing issues of regional entrepreneurial disparity, funding gaps, and the entrepreneurial underrepresentation of the marginalized sections and women. We are very happy to have you join us in the discussion today, Dr. Anish, and we look forward to hearing your views on the paper. So without wasting any further time, let us dive into our main presentation. The protocol shall be, as we usually follow for our seminar series, where the speaker has about 20 to 30 minutes to present his paper. That is followed by a discussion by the 3 panelists, where each panelist shall have about 10 to 12 minutes to share their observations. This shall be followed by a question and answer session in which the audience can participate. I request all speakers to kindly stick to your allotted time schedules to ensure maximum participation in the discussion from our virtual audience. With these words, I now invite Dr. Sanjay to make his presentation. I request IT team to kindly ensure his presentation shared.
Thank you, Swati. Yeah, I'll share my screen. Yeah, this is the topic: adoption of Industry 4.0 technology in India's startup ecosystem. This is a work in progress paper. I am hopeful that I would get very useful feedback from the very distinguished panelists here today with us. So yeah, this is the outline of my presentation. Introduction, data and methodology. Then I'll discuss the adoption of Industry 4.0 technology. Sorry. Yeah. Then I'll discuss the effective diffusion of IR4 technology. Followed by concluding remark. There is some difficulty. Just a minute. Yeah. This is the introduction. you know that you all know that first industrial revolution that is basically driven by invention of steam engine, mechanization, and railroad construction. They kind of induced the first industrial revolution. The second one is driven by electricity, assembly line, and mass production. And third one was driven by semiconductor, electronics, computer, and internet. That is basically IC, information and communication technology. This industrial revolution, in fact, led to the tremendous growth in productivity, and also uh, that benefited, everyone benefited this from these industrial revolutions that benefited the human beings in a varied manner. So now we have this industry 4.0, that is fourth industrial revolution, that came into being with the emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing, that is 3D printing, augmented reality, big data analytics, blockchain, cloud computing, Internet of Things, advanced robotic, and so on. The interesting thing about this IR4 technology, that this technology is kind of it works along with the ICT. In fact, it cannot be work independently without ICT. That is IR3 industrial revolution 3. And so that's why it is called it is a IR4 technology fusion of old and emerging technology. And this fusion of old and emerging technology, in fact, blurring the boundary of physical and digital world. And so since it is a fusion, industry for fusion of old and emerging technology, so absence of ICT diffusion can dampen the adoption process of IR4 technology. If we do not have adequate ICT diffusion in our country, we cannot benefit from the IR4 technology. But it is in that IR4 technology are getting diffusion in several sectors or activity around the world. All the manufacturing, agriculture, manufacturing, tertiary, and all the activity there when they got this application in several sectors. Now you see what is the market of this IR4 technology as provided by ONTA 21. Currently, they have the market of 350 billion US dollar, but they are likely to they're likely to reach 3.2 trillion by 2025 in a couple of years. So if you see that of this IR4 technology, IoT, that is Internet of Things, they have something around 130 billion US dollar share. That would increase to something around 1.5 trillion by 2025. And similarly, there is another important technology, that is robotics, which currently having in 2018 it has a market share of 32 in the world. That would increase to 499 by 2025. Similar, another interesting technology, solar PV, that has a market share of $554 billion. That would increase something around 3-4 fold. Similarly, other technology of IR4 would also increase in a very significant manner in couple of years. That it has been expected, it has been projected by ONTA. And now that's why these technology basically they are basically produced or used by the developed country. They are the basically supplier and users of IR4 technology, where a developing country like India are the users of this technology. We don't manufacture this technology. Mostly we use this technology. That's why developing country, there is a kind of developing and striving kind of using this technology. And there is expectation that adoption of IR4 technology in developing country can increase productivity tremendously, facilitate efficient and sustainable uses of resources, enable predictive maintenance, enable us detecting disease and responding to the public health emergency, and thereby bringing significant positive change into our life. That's why countries around the world, both developed and developing countries, are striving to adopt the IR4 technology to reap the potential advantage of IR4 technology as early as possible. India is no exception in this regard. It has started adopting IR4 technology to revitalize its economy. So given the significance of the adoption of IR4 technology to the developing country in particular, so it is pertinent to have a, to understand the adoption of IR4 technology in India. That's why I try to explore the adoption of IR4 technology in India. Especially, I try to analyze how, in what context, the IR4 technology are adopted in several sectors or economic activity of the country. But the issue is here that there is a serious data constraint to understand the adoption of IR4 technology, how, in which context they are adopted, that we cannot have with the given, you know, data source. There is no standard data source. There are some data that is very, that is very expensive data. One cannot afford to have that. Individual cannot have can afford to have that. Nevertheless, there is a Startup India platform. The Startup India that started in 2016 January to kind of incentivize the novel startup company, those who are innovative, those who are intention to, those who are objective innovate and produce more employment. To incentivize those startups company, the Startup India platform came to being. They provide the data on Industry 4.0 technology. Basically, they in 2020 they started. This is the National Startups Award. Basically, to kind of incentive further incentivize the forms, the startups company, those who are the best with respect to the innovation and unemployment. Since the Startup India important objective is to innovate unemployment, so that is the criteria of this National Startups Award to kind of select the winners. So there are around 450 application that came in 2020 and 2021, but 26 startups were are the winners list from the National Startup Award. And so what I did, it is not possible to have all the application. So I have taken the best 26 startups, those who are, assumed to have more, and I have taken the startup there basically using the IR4 technology. There are many other startups. There are around 450 are only startups, those who use IR4 technology. So from them, I have taken 26 startups. So and then there are 29 selected startups that I have taken from the Startup India platform that showcase these startups. These 29 startups are basically showcased. They are also again scrutinized and screened through the expert committee. There various round of screening was taken place before they are showcased. They are the best startups. They are not the winners, but they are basically the best startup among from their group, in fact. So they do extraordinarily with respect to innovation and employment. That's why they are allowed to be showcased in the Startup India platform. So I have taken 29 total 55 startups I have selected for this analysis, and they are the you can say that they are the best startups, those who are based on IR4 technology. So I have adopted the exploratory approach to understand how, in what context, this IR4 technology are adopted into startups in India. Let's see that how they are located. If you see that they are basically mostly located in Bangalore, if you see that, then followed by Mumbai, then Delhi, NCR, then Chennai, and the other city. And what I understood from this data that they are mostly located in the metro city, basically big city. They are not spread into the small cities and the village level. That is the thing. They are mostly concentrated in the metro city or big city. After discussing this thing, let's see that how it is happening to the adoption. If you see, they are kind of all the sector, most of sector are using this technology. If you see the IR4 technology, they are kind of spread across all the sector. You see, but if you see particularly AI, that is artificial intelligence, they are kind of almost spread into all the sector. Then there is another important technology, that is IoT. They are also spread across all the sector except 3 sector. In fact, marine, education, and IT service, because maybe they are not using IoT. So maybe the data what I have got, they are not showing they are using IoT. So with this thing, let's see that how, in what context these sectors they are using different IR4 technology. Let's see the agriculture. let's see what is how the agriculture startups are using IR4 technology in agriculture. You see that in agriculture, agriculture supply chain there is information asymmetry. In agriculture value chain, there are farmers, middlemen, there intermediary or final consumer. The farmers basically they tend to exploit it by the series of these middlemen, intermediary. They tend to exploit them like anything, as they don't have any information about the pricing of their product. Once their product leaves the field, the farmer don't have any idea how it is happening to their product, how they are being priced, how they are being sold. They don't have an idea. So they are under asymmetric. So they tend to receive very less remuneration on their product. Similarly, consumer have also no information about their purchase regarding with respect to quality, safety, hygiene, and they hardly have any idea that the money they are paying for the product, and then how much of it is going to the farmer. They don't have also any idea. So this is the serious problem that is kind of affecting the farmer. Farmer is not being incentivized. They create disincentive for the farmers, and also consumer also not in. They are not sure about the quality, safety, hygiene about the product. So there is a serious problem here. But this problem you cannot solve with the existing method, existing process of, any mechanism you cannot solve. Here, that's why we hear there is a interference of IR4 technology. What startups are they doing? Basically using blockchain technology to digitize the different player of the value chain. So by doing that, they are kind of connecting. All the players are connecting. So and so they have the digitization of the supply chain can enable enable all the user to have the access to price and quality of the product. So this is how they kind of do away with the information asymmetry in agriculture supply chain, thereby induces the farmer to produce and also make the consumer happy with respect to the product. They know that how much what is the source of their product, source of their commodity they are using, or source of service they are using. They have the clear idea about that. So this kind of technology, you can see that that Emotech that located in Mumbai, they use blockchain, the digitized supply chain. By doing that, they ensure food quality and price transparency and end-to-end traceability of agriculture product. Similarly, there are problems in other supply chains, and that also are being solved through the adoption of IR4 technology. There is another problem here about in agriculture, there is a crop protection and management. Basically, in these days, farmers and agri scientists are struggling to protect their crops from insect pests. But again, these insect pests over time they develop the resistance against the pesticide and insecticide. And also, you see the price of pesticide is also spiraling day by day. There are also government restrictions to the usage of this pesticide to protect the crop. So that makes the farmer kind of helpless. Basically, the farmers like an horticulture crop farmer, plantation crop grower, floriculture crop grower, cash crop grower, tea and coffee farmer, and so on. This kind of situation make them helpless. They cannot protect their crop. So that is a very serious problem. This problem we cannot solve. There is no other any other method we can adopt to solve this. So there we can expect that IR4 technology can be in here. That's why that startups are adopting IR4 technology just to sort out this kind of problem. So they, for example, AI Genix, they uses AI, and they supply a brave hawk. It is a machine. They kind of it is an environmentally friendly and non-toxic technology for agriculture insect waste management and sustainable farming, which is designed to phase out highly hazardous toxic pesticide. So this is why this is helping the farmers to protect their crop. So, but simply pesticide is not good for health. So this is a better way to dealing with. They are now into the market. You find they are being used to deal with this kind of crop protection issue in agriculture. And there is another issue that basically that we found, with respect to they basically organized farmer, corporate farmer, they kind of find this kind of problem in managing, protecting, managing and monitoring their farm. They basically do the farming like tea, coffee, winemaking, high return crops like horticulture, fruits from farming, nuts and cereal, which requires strict regulation and overall quality of product. Strict regulation on overall quality of product. Who have to maintain the standing crop throughout the year. You have to maintain the crop throughout the year. If you neglect the crop, then you have to incur huge losses. So, and also it is also difficult for the human to know the situation about the soil quality, water quality, localized weather of the farm on a near real time basis. You need to know happening in real time basis what is happening to your crop. You need to know. And again, the idea to physically managing and monitoring of this huge farm, makes the farming expensive, as a huge part of the expenses goes to meet the labor cost. In this context, in this situation, in fact, NIBA, that is located in Imphal, Manipur, they uses IoT to manage and monitor agriculture farm. They use IoT to manage, monitor this. So remotely they can monitor this so that they can know what is happening to the soil quality, what is happening to their crop. They can know it remotely, and that improve the productivity and also reduce the labor cost. So these are the things that where we have seen that airport startups are in use. So let's see that what is happening to animal husbandry. You see that in animal husbandry, there is a issue of low productivity. India is the leading producer and consumer of milk, but the majority of dairy farmers are small and medium. They struggle to own a sustainable owning. And there is in dairy farming, there is a considerable gap in training and knowledge with respect to cattle nutrition, milk, clean milk production, and cattle health management. And they use this conventional method of farming. They don't you update they adopt the advanced method of dairy farming. So and they don't have access to the qualified veterinarian and artificial insemination worker in rural area. These features are severely affecting the quality of milk production, productivity, and profitability of animal husbandry in India. To address this issue, Move Farms they uses AI and machine learning to help the farmer to manage the dairy farm. They through their application, mobile apps, they monitor, they help them to have access to that qualified veterinarian and artificial insemination workers, and they through the apps that the farmer, dairy farmer, can have the access to the quality input for the dairy farming, and so on. They can get the expert opinion about their product, about their farming. So that benefiting the dairy farmer productivity, and they benefiting the and they help them to coming out of their that struggling life to earn a sustainable living. There is another problem, that is a milk adulteration of milk. So that is the data the Food and Agriculture Organization shows that India is the world's largest milk producer with 22% of global production, followed by United States of America, China, Pakistan, Brazil. But there is a cause of concern that significant portion of Indian milk is adulterated, which is not only keep the farmer in survival mode, as they are paid less because of their adulterated milk, but also keep the consumer fearful. Consumer always suspectful, doubtful about the quality of milk. So that also discourage them to consume milk. Even though there are some rudimentary tests also happen, that fat and SNF, that that is undertaken at the collection center, where the milk is collected for the collected so that it can go to the go to the aggregator, so aggregator can distribute to the consumer, whatever. So but whatever test is happening at the collection center, that is not shared across the dairy supply chain. So all the users, basically the players of the supply chain, that farmer, then users, and also the intermediary aggregator, they don't have any idea about. They don't have that farmers and consumer, they don't have any idea about the quality of the milk, that composition of milk. They don't have an idea. Simply we are consuming. So because they are not being shared, even though there is some test is happening to test the milk quality, they are not being shared. There is a problem. And this kind of practice encourage the dishonest farmer, but discourage the honest farmer. That make them suffer. But in this case, the Qubit, that is a startup company, they uses IoT and blockchain. They detect the milk adulteration milk at the center, at the collection center, and kind of that data they kind of share across the value chain, so that brings the transparency with respect to the quality of the milk, and that kind of discourage the adulterant milk farmer to go for doing the the dishonest thing of milk adulteration. And also that this is how they kind of improve the milk quality, that also increase the milk production, and that will reduce the milk adulteration. So this is how IR4 technology are helping the sorting out the issue of adulteration of milk. Let's see that what is happening to the energy sector, how this IR4 technology is being used in is adopted in energy sector. You see that energy sector basically there is a serious problem with the problem in conventional grid system. You see that electricity is very important for everybody, but this sector is kind of confronted with several challenges: increasing energy demand, transmission and distribution losses, peak load management, reliability issue of asset management, providing affordable electricity, the problem of integrating renewable energy source to deal with the issue of energy shortage, and so on. The conventional grid system fails to address this issue. They cannot kind of integrate the renewable energy to the grid. They fail, so that there is a serious issue that they fail to address the issue of this that above cited issue of electricity sector, and that is a pressure on conventional grid. In fact, that leads to the usage of fossil fuel, and thereby it adds huge carbon footprint. So uses of more, if you are relying on conventional grid system, it tend to use fossil fuel, that will increase more carbon footprint. It will generate more carbon. So then the pollution issue is there with the usage of fossil fuel, and that's why to deal with this issue there is a ICISoft that is located. It is a startup company located in Bangalore, Karnataka. They uses IoT, ML, machine learning, and deep learning to digitize the supply chain of electricity and turn the conventional electric grid system to smart grid system. In smart grid here, all the players of the supply chain of electricity, they are connected. There is an interaction among these. They interact with each other. All the sector, those who are users and producer, generator and distributor, all are kind of connected. They also become the part of the electricity generation through the renewable energy, and they kind of share that knowledge, that electricity with the central grid, that smart grid. So the smart grid system is a kind of address this issue of the above cited issue what I have cited. So it in addition it also offer that meter data management, meter data analytics, energy consumption monitoring, peak load management, renewable energy integration, and then all the problem that we are kind of dealing with the conventional grid system, they can be sorted out through the ICISoft startups that uses IR4 technology. And there is another problem of the managing and monitoring energy uses. There is a problem. Basically, if the energy usage, electricity is not monitored and managed properly, it leads to wastage and inefficient uses of energy. Energy monitoring involves overall energy consumption of a facility or consumption in a defined area, or recording of individual energy consumption of each device. All this requires installation of multiple methods with complex wiring and instruction. So there is a start of Manual Labs that is located in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. They uses IoT, machine learning, deep learning to offer a single device that is called Manion, that kind of manage and monitor the energy usage, and so that it enable the energy transparency and energy efficiency. They reduce the wastage of energy, and it thereby saves the energy. And also, IR4 technology are also being deployed to harness, store, and monitor solar energy by the household. that we all know that relying on fossil fuel leads to a generation of a carbon footprint. So then it is better to rely on sun. Sun is the source of all life on our planet, but there is our fixed source of supply of energy are in depleting stage. At the same time, these sources also generate carbon dioxide. So that's why there is a startups Junro. They uses the virtual reality IoT data analytics to provide rooftop solar solution to household. They help the household to install the rooftop solar system so that they can harness, store, and monitor solar energy and thus thereby solve their electricity problem. So now let's see that what is happening, how manufacturing sector, kind of using this IR4 technology. What are the context, what are the conditions in which they are being used? There is a pressing in basically in manufacturing sector, there is a composite manufacturing or additive manufacturing. For that IR4 technology is being used. Basically, that is 3D printing is used to do the composite manufacturing. There in manufacturing sector, there is a pressing demand for customizability, reduction in error, zero material waste, low development cost and time, which cannot be met through the conventional method of manufacturing. And that's why in recent year there is a 3D printing technology has drawn a major attention as it can meet this increasing demand of manufacturing. We said there are increasing demand of 3D printing, high performance polymer and lightweight aviation component. So to address this issue of manufacturing sector, Fabheads, a startup company, they develop a 3D printer. Here they uses the carbon fiber. Instead of steel and plastic, they use the carbon fiber to manufacture carbon to offer the composite manufacturing experience to carbon fiber industry. They use the carbon fiber instead of plastic or steel, and that can be those components that to produce the component that can be used in aerospace, aviation, defense sector of the country. And this carbon fiber basically they are more stronger than steel or less lighter than plastic. So this is a kind of replacement of plastic and steel. This technology kind of replace the steel uses of steel and plastic to make the component which can be used in the defense sector, aerospace, and aviation sector. This fiber they develop a 3D printer that can do this composite manufacturing for the sector for carbon fiber industry, so that they can they can produce the component for the aviation, defense sector, and so on. There is another issue of the manufacturing sector, and there is real-time monitoring of food quality. Now the population growth and increasing urbanization, the rising income have generated a need and demand for trade of ready-to-eat cooked food. But that is the kind of trend that you'll find mostly in the urban area. So, but in that but there is a questionable thing that about the quality of this food, the reliability of this food, the ready-to-eat food. We do whether whenever we buy a product, we do not check the quality of the quality of the ready-to-eat food, cooked food. So there is a serious issue there. And that kind of affect the delivery industry, food delivery industry. In fact, we sometimes we do not trust some delivery aggregator. We sometimes rely on some, but all the the food delivery supply chain basically that industry they do not provide they ensure they are the quality of the food. To deal with this kind of issue, basically, and there is Udyog Yantra, there is startup located in New Delhi. They uses AI, ML, and IoT. They offer a Udyog Yantra, that is a machine that can monitor food quality and quantity in a real-time basis, thus to ensure the right quality and quantity of food. So that this real-time monitoring food can be addressed through the deployment of Udyog Yantra that uses AI, Industry 4 technology. There are many other uses of apart from this composite manufacturing and real-time monitoring of food. There are also IR4 technology are also addressing those several issues pertaining to manufacturing, and they faces the challenges where there is a requirement of intervention of IR4 technology. Basically, the customer support after sales services and shop floor operation management, predictive maintenance for that, supply chain There are all the supply chain logistic issue, and there are several issues. They are we have seen that we discuss there are they find challenge. They find challenge. There is a challenge in that particular segment where we can expect the application of IR4 technology. Let's see what is happening to the marine sector. In marine sector, there is a difficulty in inspecting underwater asset. You don't we know that we all know that there are millions of structures such as bridge, dams, oil rigs, submerged pipelines, submarine data, power cables, and these structures which are underneath the water, and they are beyond our sight, but they offer a great strategic. They play a great strategic role for the country, in fact. But uh, but there is a hostile environment in the sea in the marine sector. So the inspection of these assets is sometimes very difficult. Because the environment is very hostile. Sometimes you cannot rely. We cannot you cannot predict the behavior of the sea. So and the ocean. Very difficult to inspect. However, the startups iRob and Planis, they started using IR4 technology such as robotics, AI, ML to deal with the difficulty of inspecting underwater assets, such as identifying cracks, defect, and possible anomaly in a variety of assets located in underwater. Here, you cannot have any other way to inspect. If you deploy man, that is risky. So it may there is a risk of their life. So the only way we cannot do the inspection of underwater asset is that is happening through the deployment of IR4 technology. Startups are kind of started deploying robotics, AI, ML to inspect the underwater assets safely and efficiently. So we can see that how basically IR4 technology are deployed in the challenging situation where there is a conventional practice or conventional method cannot fails to address the issue, where we are finding this IR4 technology application. There are another sector that is, and also we need the data. We need the data, oceanic and maritime data. We need to have. We need to have them real time so that we can. We need to have them because of strategy decision and so on. So, but the collection of maritime and oceanic data in real time is really unsafe and challenging activity. The solution to this problem is usually very expensive. They cannot provide real time data, even though you can have the data from the ocean or sea, but we cannot have the real time data, and we cannot deploy human being as there is a risk involved in it. Because the weather condition is not favorable for human being, to get into the sea and collect the data. And there, in this case, that startups company like SD Sagar Defense Enterprises, they located in Mumbai, Maharashtra. They uses robotic to produce marine unmanned vehicle system to collect maritime and oceanic data in real time. And this SDE can collect the data efficiently and safely without putting human life at any risk. Let's see. There are also IR4 technology are also into the education sector. Basically, there is an issue that there want these students are pass out. There is a serious awareness issue that they don't have don't have idea about what to do, what to pursue, what career to pursue, what job to take up. They don't have any idea. There is a paucity of counselor and mentor in India. There is this absence of awareness now that can affect the that makes the basically the qualified students unemployable. They are not giving them the way out what kind of career to pursue, and whatever career sometimes they pursue, and they are not happy with the kind of job. Even whatever career they study, they do, sometimes they are not happy with that kind of learning and education. In this case, that Bodhami, they uses AI to offer personalized career counseling learning platform. This helps student or job seeker to choose a right career choice learning. And also there is another important issue that is also IR4 technology are kind of solving. That is, according to the WHO, 90% of the approximately 285 million affected by visual impairment live in the poorest country, and their socio-economic condition is often measurable. And because of their lack of awareness, or because of the financial because of financial condition, they don't have access. They don't have access to the required technology, which could make them self-reliant and thereby helping them lead a path of progress. Ginger Mind, they use AI for technology and they offer ID. Hello, could you please, somebody is kind of creating any noise. Could you please turn up your mic? They use they offer ID, that is AI manpower, smartphone app, and wearable like smart glasses to empower visually impaired people to function independently. There are also, I don't want to get into, I don't have much time, so I will quickly finish things. So you can see that it is also airport deployed in the healthcare industry, basically for early diagnostic services. Basically, there are issues of the early stage, basically particularly early stage breast cancer. Basically, the conventional method, what is done that it can detect the cancer among the women, those who are above 45-year-old. Those who are below 45-year-old, we cannot detect whether they are having any breast cancer or not. We cannot have that. But with the new the Niramoi, they uses AI to detect the early stage breast cancer among the women, those who are above, those who are age above 18 of all till those are above 18, they cannot be diagnosed. They can be diagnosed, but in the conventional practice, only a woman of 45 age can be diagnosed. We can detect whether they have any breast cancer or not. Like similarly, there is a then there is a digital access to healthcare services that is also provided through the adoption of airport technology. Basically, what happens, the digital health, basically what they do that there is a through the early therapeutics, basically they use AI and IoT. What they do that they kind of monitor the patient remotely in a real-time basis. 20% they monitor, try to understand the health situation of the patient. Accordingly, they suggest the needful so that they can take care of the issue, that their health issue. Similarly, for elder care platform also we are using IR4 technology. So I cannot get into detail of them, but I don't have much time. And also in IT sector, they are also grappling with several challenging issue where they need the deployment of where the startups are deploying IR4 technology to address this. Basically, customer relation management. Basically, it is not possible to manage the customer online customer 24/7. It is not possible for a human to address that. In that case, the Yogasa and Lookboost, they are kind of using IR4 technology deal with the online customer, digital customer. Similarly, there is in the basically in the recruitment, basically in any enterprises, when they are doing the recruitment, sometimes they do not get the good candidate for their job. In that case, what they do that they sometimes the least talented, in fact, people they tend to recruit, and that affect their productivity and efficiency. But here, talent required, in fact, they use the AI and ML. By doing that, using that, they kind of automate the talent recruitment onboarding process of enterprises. That is effortless, efficient, and just system. There is no discrimination. That is not inefficiency in the process. There are in the several miscellaneous cases also we are seeing that IR4 technology are being deployed where the existing the existing activity cannot be accomplished through the existing practice. So there we are finding that IR4 technology application. You see that there is in traffic maintenance, basically with a given methodology, given practices, conventional practices, that we cannot deal with the traffic maintenance. We cannot you cannot capture the real time what is happening to the vehicle, what is happening to the traffic violation. It is very difficult to do. Here, the Noen, there is a startups that is located in South Delhi. What they are doing, that they are using AI and computer vision. So they do the real world visual monitoring through the CC camera along with the AI. So they kind of capture the traffic violation, traffic maintenance, and they accordingly, they report that to they do the report to the traffic organization, traffic. So that kind of thereby they solve the traffic menace, and that reduces when they are monitored in a real time. That kind of reduces the a traffic menace, that reduces the accident, dangerous driving, and traffic violation. Similarly, in construction sector, there are issue of the wastage of raw material, wastage of and there sometimes they find there is a they don't find a skilled worker do the job, and sometimes they do the work in inefficiency in unsustainable manner. So but there is a Tavasta basically that is located in IIT Madras. Basically they started with this the 3D printing technology. They can do they can automate the construction. The building can be built through 3D printing. By doing that, they kind of optimally uses the raw material, and that reduce the cost, and also they also that address the regular shortage of the skilled labor. So this is where also where basically if a normal way of construction that leads to the wastage of raw material, and also sometimes you may not get the skilled worker. To address this issue also, we are also deploying 3D printing can be addressed, can be used to address the issue. Of course, it may lead to the it may take away the employment of the construction sector. Those which informal employment will be, but there is an issue, that is separate thing to deal with. There is a in the pipe water line, basically in the building, in the society, we are find there is all many times you will find there is leakage of water, and there is a broken pipe and all that leads to the wastage of water. And in city like metro city like Chennai, there is a water crisis is serious. Water is a serious issue. That to address this issue, that we got a startups company. They kind of use IoT to kind of monitor the water waste, and if there is an anomaly with the pipe, is there any problem with the pipe and brokerage, and any damage and all that can be taken care, that can be addressed automatically, so that will be address the wastage of water and irregular shortage of water. And there is another issue, the important issue, that public toilet. Basically, if you see the public toilet everywhere in India will go, that is very dirty and hygienic, and nobody will want to go to use the public toilet. What happened? Loo tool, basically startups, what they're doing, that located in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, they use IoT to monitor the public toilet. They convert that public toilet in a smart room services at affordable price of 10. So they use IoT to monitor the usage of the toilet, and cleanliness, hygiene, everything will be monitored through the IoT. Thereby they convert that public toilet to smart restroom services that can be offered at affordable price of 10. And this is there are several challenges of the activity, economic activity, where there is a challenge where the conventional method cannot be deployed to address the issue. Then what we have seen that startups are kind of using IR4 technology to deal with this kind of challenging issue, and thereby addressing the problem. Let's see that what we have seen that this startups that IR4 technology adapt across the sector. Now see that how effectively these the startups are adopted this IR4 technology. Before discussing the effectiveness of IR4 technology, before discussing the adoption of IR4 technology, let's discuss in a business there is a different stages. In fact, any startups will go through the 4 stages, basically 5 stages. In fact, there is ideation stage, validation stage, early traction stage, scaling stage. I think 4 stages, sorry. And the ideation stage, that comes when the idea of the product or service is conceived, that is called ideation stage. And that is second stage come validation stage. That is when the minimum value of the product is developed for the market. That stage is called validation stage. The another stage that is called next stage, early traction stage. When the startups or business and start selling, start having the first phase of the consumer and started generating revenue, that is called early traction stage. Finally, there is a scaling stage, that is called basically the scaling stage when the consumer is kind of established and started to earning sustainable profit. That is called scaling stage. So these stages are very much important for the startups or any business to go through. But here you can see from the left side of the table that most of startups are the airport technology is successfully adopted into the startups. As you can see, there are around 82% of the startups are seen to have adopted airport technology. You can see that that for 82%, for 47% of startups are in early traction and 35 in scaling stage. That shows that startups are adopted into the airport technology are adopted into the startups. But this adoption can be linked to the ICT performance of the India. As I have discussed that airport technology is a fusion of old and new emerging technology. Old technology, if the old technology, that is ICT, is not performing well, we cannot have the successful so you cannot have the adoption of or diffusion of airport technology. You can see that ICT performance has that ICT, this is the global innovation index. ICT is the important pillar of the input oriented innovation index. Again, input oriented innovation index is the product of global innovation index. So you can see that ICT performance of India has increased from around 39 to 72 during 2015 to 2022. So this adoption that we have, that startups are in setup, those are using airport technology, they are in early traction and scaling. So that shows that airport technology are adopted.
I'm sorry, Sanjay, I'll have to interrupt. Can you please wind up in
Yes.
3-4 minutes?
I'll wind up in 2 minutes. It's all. This is the second last slide. And so, but this is the thing that we can attribute this adoption to the ICT performance. But again, if you see the successful adoption, effective adoption is only 35%. Because sometimes the startups, if they reach the early traction stage, sometimes they don't go beyond the early traction stage because the early phase consumer, I know they are not satisfied, and there is several other issues also there, and that do not facilitate the startups to go beyond the early traction. In that case, there is an issue that that effective adoption is 35%. But in that case, that is though our ICT performance has improved steadily, but still that is not adequate. We need to kind of increase the ICT diffusion to kind of induce the kind of users, because this technology, it will benefit you only if you have the ICT. If people don't have the internet, if people don't have the computer, don't have the mobile phone, smart, at least internet they don't have the free access, it's difficult. You cannot imagine that that the startups will reach the scaling stage. Maybe since we are talking about the ICT, because we are talking about airport technology only, because the startup assets are a different way to evaluate. So we are not going to that. I am only worried about the startups are very much linked to it. The airport technology are very much linked with ICT. That's why I am trying to explain the performance of adoption of airport through ICT performance. Yeah, in concluding remarks, what we have seen that airport technology are adopted into several sectors such as agriculture, animal husbandry, energy manufacturing, marine education, healthcare, IT service, so on. It is seen that what I've seen from the paper, that the sector, those who are grappling with the several challenges which are seen to have addressed through the adoption of airport technology. It is also important to note that the tasks which entail the adoption of airport technology are often, as observed from this paper, are very challenging for human being to undertake, and it is not possible. It cannot be accomplished through the conventional practice. There we are finding the application of airport technology. But adoption of airport technology in India can be linked to the steady improvement of ICT, as I discussed just. However, we have seen that only 1/3 of the selected startups are effectively adopted this technology. Majority of them has not reached the sustainable stage of their business. It is further noticed that we have also noticed that airport technology are mostly concentrated in the metro city, not spread into small cities. So we can see that the current status of ICT performance or diffusion in India is not adequate to ensure effective adoption of airport technology. Therefore, more efforts are required to spread ICT expediently to accelerate the successful adoption of airport technology in India. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sanjay, for sharing this very comprehensive and interesting work that sincerely tries to understand, in presence of various data constraints you have mentioned, the processes and context in which the IR4 technologies are being adopted into the startup ecosystem, and particularly the extent to which they are effective in addressing some fundamental challenges in the development of various strategic and crucial sectors of the economy. So now we can move on to the second section of our session, which is where I'll be inviting all my panelists to share their comments on the paper. So I would like now to invite our first panelist, Professor Balaji Parthasarathy, to share his comments on the paper.
Thank you, Dr. Verma. Am I audible there to the audience? Okay, thank you. So thank you, Dr. Malik, for your presentation. I think there are three broad components of my comments that I'll try and keep, to a minimum. So this is a really, what shall I say, an emerging topic, deserves a lot of our attention. And to that extent, congratulations on sticking your neck out to explore this. Having said that, I think that I'd like to sort of raise a number of issues that, since you said it's work in progress, will hopefully provide you some input to take it ahead. Okay. First, when we're talking about this whole notion of IR4 technologies, right? You adopted this definition from the UNCTAD, okay, which is fine, except that, because these technologies are evolving, there's also a lot of overlap across these technologies, and we don't exactly know where the boundaries start and boundaries end. And when you actually take that over to India and say, these are the technologies that are used in these startups, it's not clear from the paper, at least, whether the same UNCTAD typology of technologies is the same typology that is used in India to look at the relationship between the technologies on one hand, their production on the other, and then their applications in various domains that you point out. So we don't know, for instance, if you look at, is India adopting the same definitions as UNCTAD? And the next question then is, to what extent are these technologies distinct? So, for example, in your columns on technologies, you say AI, ML, IoT, blockchain, etc. Now, these are not necessarily watertight technologies, in the sense each of them is not very discrete. There is a significant overlap. So when you say it is the application of this technology or that leads to certain kinds of changes, you begin to wonder, is it unique? I mean, to what extent are you able to sort of make these distinctions, and how useful are they in helping us think through these technology-induced changes, right? So that's the first thing, instead of how exactly are we creating this typology of technologies, and what is the distinction between them, and what insight does it actually offer us? The next thing is that, you identify a group of firms that are making, producing these technologies or generating them in response to certain needs that users in different sectors are feeling. It might be education, animal husbandry, the whole bunch of them to recommend it. But I think and this is probably the issue that I had with the paper the most, both the firms that are producing them and the needs of consumers are treated as complete black boxes. In the sense, when you say, for instance, that firm X in such and such a location is actually indulging, is in the area of sort of dairy management or whatever it is, what aspect of dairy management are they actually looking at? Why is it that everything that all the examples that we are actually provided are quote unquote successes? There are different routes to actually achieving these goals that you might actually pursue. There is no one route, okay? What then are the needs of the consumers themselves? You can say that, you're improving productivity, you're doing things more efficiently, and so on. We're never really told what the specific problem of the consumer is. And then we say, how is it that these were actually improved, right? Where did that change actually come? To simply go ahead, if you talk to a company that produces technology, it's almost inevitable. They'll say, use my product, things will get better for you, right? But in what particular form is it better? Why do I have to go through these technologies in order to improve productivity or efficiency or output or whatever it is that you're trying to improve? Aren't there other solutions, right? Why is it? And is this a more economical way of actually going about doing these things, right? Then there's the larger question of the, each of these changes that you're attempting to bring about also requires what you might call a change in the division of labor, in the sense, why these, what are these companies producing? What kind of skills do they have? And on the consumer end, most critically, which is where you identify these improvements, right? What does it mean for a company that's in the area of dairy farming, for example, that uses these technologies? What kind, is it easy for every company to actually go ahead and that particular sector to adopt these technologies, right? Who is it that's ready? Who is it that can actually buy the technology, whether it's off the shelf or whether it is customized? What kind of skills does it take for me to utilize that technology? There's a long debate in the history of sort of technology about how, once technology comes in, learning how to use it takes a long period of time, right? For example, there's this classic work on, the sort of use of electricity and so on. It took a long time for these productivity improvements to actually start manifesting themselves. And for that, we actually have to, I think that's where, not treating the consumer and the consumer's requirements as a black box will go a long way. What is it that they were doing that was not delivering certain results? What is it that helped them through this adoption? How did their methods and steps, in the sort of the production process actually change? And that led to certain improvements. And surely in all of this, there's a lot of learning by doing, learning by experimenting. And it would be nice to see how that actually happens, because it's not like a magic wand. I buy the technology, plug it in, and there are productivity and efficiency improvements, right? So I think in terms of understanding how the country as a whole is going through these requirements, and in sector by sector, where there are so many variations, right, in terms of even things like how we measure productivity, how we measure efficiency, what does it mean to do things better or worse, unless that black box is actually cracked open, right? Which we're given a paragraph on every company, and that's only the producer side. We're not told anything about how users actually learn to figure out the use and application of these technologies. Ideally, we should also know how is it that the producer learned to understand the specific, the challenges that consumers are facing or the user is facing. The producer also doesn't sort of go there at one shot, try and understand. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of tacitness to the production processes in different segments. There are things that are explicit, things that are tacit, and it takes a lot of time to actually understand these things, right? To the extent we don't know, to see this all reduced to a table is, I think, to sort of simplify that whole process, and perhaps you'd benefit from actually elaborating on this particular process, because before that impact, which is all largely, it's great to know that there are improvements of all sorts happening. I think there's a lot of the proverbial slip between the cup and the lip before you actually to get to where you would like to be, right? So please think of, actually giving us far more detail. I mean, this in a sense leaves you, wanting for more, right? How did this happen? Why did this happen, right? There are so many, the application of technology is littered with failures, because people simply don't know how to sort of buy the technology and actually use it in order to transform their own businesses, right? And their sort of day-to-day processes, right? Whether it's automation of any kind, whatever it is. So I think we really need to know that whole process of learning by doing, how these customers figure out their own problems, where these issues are. And I think this is a sort of related question here about saying, there are quite often we hear terms like productivity improved, efficiency improved, this went up by 20%, that went up by 35%. Fine, glad to hear that. But what does that productivity really mean? How do I, what do I benchmark it against? Like, do I know is 30% increase good enough? Maybe there are other ways of not using this IR4 or using IR4 more effectively for that matter, where you might get 60%, right? So why is it, why are we led to believe that this is necessarily a dramatic improvement that could have been delivered only by IR4 at a reasonably economic rate or whatever it is, right? And then what do we mean? See, the notion of efficiency and productivity is not something that's universal and global, right? It relates to very specific processes. It's as much a social process. When we talk about efficiency and productivity, we're talking about as much about how these are sort of it calls for a certain kind of a social engagement with the division of labor in order to lead to certain kinds of transformation. How is it that we actually get there, and why is it that we consider something to be a productivity improvement? How is it sort of even measured, right? Okay, so this whole notion of these various terms that are used, I think need to be sort of really fleshed out a little more so that we get an understanding of the process by which this transformation in the whole process is actually going on. I'll make one final comment and I'll stop there. Now, you say that this is a largely metropolitan phenomenon, right? You say, okay, it's Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, Bombay, the usual suspects, right? Great. Now, if you look at the startups that are producing it, perhaps that they're actually there, right? Now, here too, if you want to be very, very nitpicky, you can say maybe those startups also have centers in other parts of the country, a smaller center. For example, many firms in Bangalore have centers in Mysore. Many in Chennai have development centers in places like Coimbatore for various reasons, for access to skills and lower costs, etc. That's point number one. But more critically, I think when you talk about dairy farming typically is not to be found in the metropolitan regions, however you draw the boundaries, right? If you're going to actually see that. So I think or for that matter, your construction sites need not necessarily be in the metropolitan regions, right? So what we're saying is that when you're saying that this is confined to metropolitan regions, you're making an assumption not just about the production, where the production of those technologies is taking place. We don't know whether the consumers or where the consumption is taking place is also within metropolitan boundaries. It need not be, right? So that's the other thing I would sort of be a little more cautious about making that claim unless one gives it a little more specificity. And last but not least, in the final slide and the final reading your paper, you attribute a lot of the improvements in India's innovation index to these IR4 technologies and so on. I'm going to be honest about it. I'm skeptical, right? It's still nascent. We don't even know how to adequately classify these technologies, never mind measure them, their impacts in different sectors. To attribute a lot of that to this segment that's growing, I think I would rather hold my horses and wait for a few more years. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, sir, for these very insightful remarks and helpful suggestions. I now invite our second panelist, Dr. Bhaduri, to discuss the paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Malik. Thanks, Professor Parthasarathy also for this very insightful engagement with a very important topic. And I agree that I never believed that such kind of data could be made available for IoT related businesses. So I think that's a fantastic job. Many things can be done once you have this good set of data. And rightly so, because it's, as you said, it's a work in progress. So, our expectations are also quite high. So here are my wish lists once you see what we might like to see from such a paper once it gets completed. Of course, not all the things that I mentioned would be feasible to be put in one paper, but this is more about the work and not so much about the paper per se. I think after I have looked at the profiles of course, I knew Professor Parthasarathy's profile, but I looked at Dr. Tewari's profile, and I think they are more closer to the field in which the paper is, startups, IoT, etc. My, one very kind of my dominant field of work, which is say like more recently, which is on frugal innovation, grassroots innovation. It's about a space which has a very complex relationship with these technologies and these startups that you talk about. So my reflections would be from that side. Now, when we do work on frugal innovation, grassroots innovation, we are often told or cautioned on two grounds. And I think those are probably applicable here as well, which are like, do you want to see IoT or 4IR technology as a silver bullet to fix all the problems? Number one. And number two, are we romanticizing the use of 4IR technologies? So my basic premise is upon these two, you might say, the assumptions, beliefs, and so on. Because I think some of the impacts that you talk about in the paper can be contested, or at least one can get a richer insights to these impacts if we have talked to other people in the same value chain, maybe, right? And they are not really, are they empirically verified impacts, or they are like probable impacts? What kind of data does one have, or can one have, to support such claims of impacts? Are the problems which people are talking about to implement 4IR technologies, are these problems coming out from the ground, in which case, some quotations, some references would be very good to have, or they are like perceived problems, like adulteration of meal? It's a perceived problem, it can be there. But are these really the problems that IR technologies are tackling in that specific case? What is that case, and then how do you deal with that? Then, of course, the question is, are there other methods to do that, and so on? So to frame my observations for the future of the work, I would say I confine to 4 points. Say, sustainability, for example. Now, we all know that some of these IR technologies, especially say blockchain, uses a huge amount of energy, electricity, right? So what would be the consequences of using such technologies in a big scale, right? The second question is around employment, right? Now, we know that maybe, these technologies might create, different kind of employment profile. What would happen to people who lose their jobs for these technologies? What would be the search cost of these people to find another job? If that is not very smooth, then there would be other implications, right? And how do we envisage that whole scenario? Okay. Now, the third point is about the social cohesion. Now, we all know that any technology is being certain disruptions into the society and so on and so forth. But I would be specifically talking about this, the linkage which has been demonized quite often, and probably there are good reasons for doing so, is this whole network of the middlemen and the farmers and so on. I mean, the middlemen are the demons in that whole supply chain. And the IoT wants to replace them and to do all goods to the farmers. Now, is it really so? I mean, we had this farmer strike on the street of India a couple of years ago, and we could actually see the formidable alliance that could be formed by the middlemen and the farmers, right? Now, so this probably needs a bit of more nuanced kind of profiling and their roles into the process. Now, yes, there is no doubt that there are certain roles which are very exploitative, but does the dependency end there, or there are other things? There is a question of maybe trust, question of other kinds of social relations, right? And what would be the impact of that, right? So I probably think, and more so after seeing the way the farmer strike unfolded and so on, that probably those of us who study technology now would have to see this role of middlemen differently, and maybe something interesting will come up. I mean, I don't know, but this very conventional way of looking at middlemen as somebody who is extracting all the profits might be sort of subjected to kind of a new kind of treatment or scrutiny. And the fourth point that I would like to share with you all is the fact that, and I think it has also been worked on quite enormously, which is the role of the biases in algorithms. Right? The algorithms are not neutral device. Algorithms are not neutral ways of intervention. They have various kinds of social biases which create problems for the employees, the workers. So there is this enormous literature on how it impacts the gig work, and so on. So if we bring in some of these concerns, the efficiency, the productivity, the growth story that you are talking about, would they still stand, or would they need certain kinds of revision, right? So to come back to where I had started with is basically these 2 points. I know it's difficult to be so conscious and alert when working on an emerging field. But probably it is good to remind ourselves that are we using it as a silver bullet for a very complex set of problems, number one, and number two, are we romanticizing that? So I end here. But this has a great prospect, and I look forward to seeing the more complete version of the work at some point. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your keen observations on the work. And I'm sure they will help Dr. Sanjay in developing his work in future. Let us now invite our third panelist, Dr. Anish Tiwari, to proceed with his discussion and comments on paper.
At this point, it seems like I have nothing left to say because everything has been said. But I'm honestly glad that it's refreshing to be part of a panel where there are people who are working on India and on entrepreneurship, because for whatever reasons, I was not able to interact with so many scholars when I was doing my PhD. But look, first thing first, I probably am pretty much in the same spot as you are, Dr. Malik, because I'm an early career researcher. Let us start with sort of pointing out the things which are great about this paper. And I think in the level things that I also kind of agree with, because that's what I have found, and that's what most scholars who work on India, at least the scholars that I know, have found. It's absolutely opaque at this point in terms of publicly available data. So I think your work is phenomenal in a sense that it sort of documents these startups who are kind of funded by the public exchequer, because again, they're funded by Startup India. And it's so, at least from if someone completely sort of alien to the topic wanted to read something about what's happening in Startup India and what kind of startups they are funding, this is a great sort of document to read in that sense. Second thing that I agree with like wholeheartedly is the absolute concentration which is going on. And I think I have a slight disagreement with Professor Parthasarathi, with all due respect. Like, it doesn't really matter where their sort of customers are based, as long as the startup is centered in one sort of geography. That's where they are creating the most jobs. And like, to sort of use the imperfect analogy, Apple is based out of California. Obviously they have customers all across, they have vendors all across the world, but they tend to create most jobs in the United States. They tend to pay majority of the tax in the United States, and most of the benefits that Apple sort of has been emanating, USA has been benefiting from it. And like, I don't know if people like, what I have found is 97% or 93% of all the funding which was raised between 2018 and 2021 was happening in either Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, which is unhealthy. And there's another paper of mine which is coming out. And what I've done is I got access to data from Traction, which is your best bet as far as private firms in India are concerned. And what I have found is, despite the fact that startups located outside of these clusters, they're creating a lot more jobs. They tend to be a lot more profitable, which again, signaling better quality, but they haven't been able to raise as much funds as the startups in the clusters, which again says that, surprise, surprise, markets are not efficient. They haven't been efficient for a while. So that again, I agree. And the broad conclusion of your paper, which is again, it's not very counterintuitive, but I think research often has to say things, obvious things, like the reason why our performance innovation index that you have pointed out is growing is because internet sort of denominator of internet usage has been growing in India very rapidly. Now, having said that, it's a caveat, there are still around 50% of the population that does not have access to internet. So I think that is where I agree with Professor Parthasarathi, where he says that we need to hold our horses a little bit. I have been part, and this is what I found fascinating when Professor Bhadri was pointing out, it is part of a technology startup in Delhi. What we were trying to do was we were trying to create an OLX for these people who deal in electronic waste. And the guy, the founder is now with Wharton, he did his MBA, whatnot, but he was trying to experiment something. The problem simply wasn't there. I remember going to these, huge sort of, I won't even say dump, but the places where they have all these different vendors who are dealing with electronic waste. And we asked them, why don't you download our app or use our web application? And they're like, I have a business model here that functions for me. I have absolutely no reason to switch to whatever you're offering to me. And I think that sort of stems out in a lot of startups that you have pointed out, especially the one about frozen food, who's trying to ensure, with all due respect, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I don't think frozen food as a concept is going to go anywhere. And this, again, it's not me saying, I interviewed people who were in the food tech industry. In India, at least in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, what tends to happen is it tends to go through phases. So there was an e-commerce phase. Then for a little bit, there was a food tech space or food tech phase. And then that passed on. Then fintech phase came in and then passed on. And then edtech phase came in. And then that has passed. And now AI phase. What you'll see if you closely analyze, what happens is a lot of players emerge out of nowhere. They raise funding because, for all said and done, venture capital, the people who run these firms, they aren't as intelligent as, everybody thinks them to be. They make blunders, like they often, and that's how the industry functions. But a lot of these companies emerge, they raise a lot of money, and then they vanish out in thin air. Eventually there's consolidation, only 1-2 players are left. So like for me, it will be interesting to see how many of the startups that are in your list actually end up surviving a little longer. And I think that is where I echo what has been said before. I think, it will be great to do a longitudinal study, because I don't think anybody, as far as I know, has done any longitudinal study. I'm working on a paper on Flipkart, but that's, it's impossible to publish if you're working on a single case study. So I think that is, where it has a lot of promise in that sense. What I was also going to say is I want to draw, when you read the entire thing, cover to cover, I was not that interested in B2B sort of, okay, advances, what are these technologies doing in manufacturing? I don't concern myself with it, primarily because of my own inclinations. I was very interested in seeing what happens in farming. And again, what Professor Bhadri said, it is a phenomenal point. It is not a technology problem, it is a business model problem. I don't think technology is going to do anything as long as we have, you need to break the business model. And that is a much more challenging thing to do, because, there are alliances that people are aware of. And I don't think any startup can sort of, startups in general, I think the startups which are successful, if you see Khatabook, I don't know if many of you have heard, Khatabook is a very Indian, and I have to admit, it's my favorite one because it saw a problem of mom and pop shops. It saw a problem of financial mismanagement, and then it came up with a product which is reasonably priced, and it's benefiting them, and it's a win-win for everyone. But those kind of startups don't make the noise because they are not, out there, like they're not flashy in that sense. But again, just to the final bit, and I think it will be useful for you, maybe you have read it, the so what question. Okay, we have these startups who are working on, AI and whatnot. What exactly are we then concluding? Are we concluding that government should probably go out of their way to support these? In India's case, India is a subsidy pro country. Somebody tells them something and all of a sudden you have a new subsidy in place. I think those are sort of the inclinations that we should be wary of. And I think there is a paper by Colin Mason and Ross Brown, which I think is phenomenal as far as entrepreneurship policy is concerned. Nobody knows. And again, if you take just Startup India for this, discussion, we are drawing boundary conditions here. Startup India's main objective is to create jobs. There are papers, most notably Holtivanger, the working paper, which argues that it's young firms, young high growth firms that tend to create disproportionately, more jobs. The problem is that these firms most often don't tend to be high technology firms. So if Startup India is trying to solve a problem of, it can't startups can't really employ all the, 200, 300 million people that we have of working age, but it's working towards that end. But I'm not entirely sure that it is these startups who are working with IoT and AI. I don't think they're going to solve the problem, because high growth firms come from all sorts of sectors. If you look at Flipkart is not particularly high technology. If you look at, you can argue how PhonePe, whether it is or it is not, I mean, arguably it is. But if you look at Myntra, for instance, if you look at Byju's, for instance, I mean, it's problematic as it is, but like, just for an example, these are not particularly, very high-tech firms, but they are the ones who are creating the most jobs. So I think one thing which I want to write more and more, I mean, I've taken a break from academia, but this needs to be said enough that if you want to make sure that, entrepreneurship in India flourishes, all you need to do really is to make sure that, you have sort of a same starting line for everybody. And that is where internet, inclusion sort of comes into play. The moment government starts, or these people, they could be anybody, like, a bunch of 12 very intelligent people sitting in a room, if they think they're going to identify what the next big technology or the next big startup is, it's not going to work out. It didn't work in USSR. It didn't work in any country that tried it. It should be left. Like, in that case, I think we as people who study entrepreneurship should be supporter of, this free market sort of idea where you let people innovate and fail. And finally, I think I must say this, Professor Parthasarathy pointed out, there is a technology that exists. I can't name my client, but I am working with a client, pension management fund. They have total assets under management of $26 billion. If you look at the systems which are in place in these companies, you'll be, surprised how outdated they are. And this is what he was mentioning. The problem is not that there's no technology. The problem is the transaction cost and the switching costs are so high that companies simply are not interested in, making that sort of transition. So again, I mean, I tend to digress a lot, but I think if I were to give you one suggestion as an early career researcher, keep chasing these startups. And I think whether or not they succeed or fail, I think, that will really tell everybody a story. It will be interesting to see how things proceed. And I think that will be very, very valuable. And you can aim like a top shot journal for that, because everybody wants to know, at least the Americans want to know what's happening in Indian startup ecosystem, because their money is at stake. But thanks. It was amazing.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Anish Tiwari. I thank all panelists for sharing their extensive and very insightful viewpoints and suggestions on the paper, and also for raising some very crucial and futuristic questions on the theme of the paper, and for making this discussion so very engaging with their expert inputs and comments. So maybe we can, Dr. Sanjay would like to respond to these comments now, or shall we take questions from the floor also?
Yeah, I can respond, but yeah, then I don't have to respond much. I will send 2-3 line only.
Okay.
Yeah, see, most of these comments are there. I need to think about them. In fact, I cannot respond them all. But there are, I think, with respect to the comment made by Professor Parthasarathy, there are a lot of things what he said. I agree, but there is a difficulty, addressing those things, opening the black box of these startups things is very difficult, because there is a data constant. We have very limited information within. I try to optimize those data to try to make some sense. I know that your comments were useful. That will kind of keep me thinking to kind of improvise the paper. Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Parthasarathy. And again, Dr. Bhaduri, your comments are also, it is worth pondering on your comments. I will think about them. There are many things that I cannot answer, that I don't have even expertise to answer those things at this point, but I will think about them. And there are very, very larger question, and that, that is beyond the scope of this paper to answer. But again, I'll think in that line to try to incorporate something, in my paper. Thank you so much, Professor Bhaduri and Dr. Tiwari, and thank you so much for your comment. Yeah, I went through your paper. I read your paper. It is interesting paper. Yeah, so there are many things you have highlighted. Those things again, I need to think about. I don't have to answer. You are very much feedback and suggestive in nature, so I don't have to answer. Definitely, I have to also ponder about whatever you are very big, very crucial feedback you have given. So I need to think about them. I need to try to understand more so that I can make more sense about the startups. And also there are issue about employment issue that I did not spoke about. But since the focus of the paper, I try to basically it is I have used startups company to understand how they're using this technology. But with the data constant, there are more could have been done. Basically, there are many things I need to think about. I'll think and try to improvise. I hope I could make. I'm optimistic that I would make. I improvise the paper, yeah. And I hope your comment are definitely very useful comment. Thank you all for the feedbacks.
So now I think we have little time. We can open the floor for the audience to pose their questions, observations, and comments. Please raise your hand in case you would like to speak out, and kindly introduce yourself briefly, and also be very brief in when you speak. I wonder if some questions are there. I think 2-3 questions are already posted in the chat box. Yes, one by Mr. Ashish, one by Mr. Subdal Danta from MIT Hyderabad. He has a query to Sanjay. Given the data limits on IR 4.0, may the speaker provide a brief overview of the types and nature of work being done in India? And Ashish Gosai also has posed a question. In light of the low deployment of digitalization in these sectors, the specific technologies in additive manufacturing appear nuanced and proves counterproductive to the cause of providing employment and skilling. What are the challenges or opportunities of IR4 technologies in this context? And also another question from Mr. Satyendra Kumar. Do you have some idea about how many of these startups are spin-offs from education institutions like IITs, universities, etc.? Or any idea about what % does educational institutions contribute to startups with IR4? I wonder if Sanjay would like to respond to some of these comments and questions.
I think the last comment, that is Satyendra Kumar. So I don't think that do not have this information. I need to think about whether the startups are spin-off from the educational institute like IIT. I need to think. Yeah, there are few like that 3D printing that I spoke about, that is do the construction automation, that is from IIT Madras. There are other also. I need to highlight that. Yeah, that I have not quantified what is the percentage, but since it is a very selected startups, so we cannot quantify that how many percentage of startups are from educational institute. And again, that question by Ashish Gosai, I was in the light of. Yeah, I don't think that I am in the right position to answer this question. I need to this is a research question to understand, pursue. So I cannot answer this question right now. Thank you for the comment. I think these are the comment. I think I can read the chat box. I think that they are all. I think. Thank you.
Okay, so in that case, if we have no questions raised as such, maybe one of our panelists may like to speak maybe on the response by Sanjay. Maybe they would like to make an additional comment or something. Let us see.
I just have a very quick comment.
Yes, please.
At least for speaking for myself, I don't want to speak on behalf of either Satyendra or Dr. Tiwari. The thing is that the comments must be treated as sort of provocations, not criticism necessarily, because this is work in progress. And
Yes,
so the idea is, so you may not accept everything, but and to be sure, given that these technologies, not only is this paper work in progress, most of these companies and technologies, more crucially, are works in progress. So I think you can't pass any kind of definitive judgment on these things. So I think these merit, this kind of work is extremely important, and it also merits a longer term sort of, I mean, you got to sort of follow these technologies. These companies may not exist tomorrow. They might be succeeded by others and so on and so forth. So the evolution of the technology with its implications in different sectors is what we must be really following. And that's going to take that's a game of patience, that'll require you to this thing. And some of these provocations that were made today, hopefully will contribute to that over the longer term. Thank you and all the very best.
Thank you, sir.
So much, sir. I think there's another question posted in the chat box. How to proceed with Samriddhi schemes for SC students or students?
I think this question has already, I think Dr. Anish can answer this question. But as he has discussed in his paper about that, this Startup India, in fact, they fails to address, include this SC/ST marginalized people into the system. I have not heard about the Samriddhi scheme, but I need to read about them. But the current Startup India thing, they kind of, as if I read correctly, I think Dr. Anish can answer this question.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm pleasantly surprised that the union government, if this scheme is launched by the union government, has thought of, because that's my bone of contention with Startup India as a policy. Firstly, there were spelling mistakes in the document. I'm like, you can't do that. There is an entire ministry. You can't be having spelling mistakes in a document, but anyways, not nitpicking. My bone of contention was with the imagination. And part of it has to do with the fact that our ministries are not diverse. Like, I was reading, there was a report in Hindu which argued that majority of the joint secretaries or secretary, whichever one is higher, I think there's very little representation from the SC/ST community. And then my assumption is these are the people who end up making the policy. It's primarily a issue with, how they imagine. So they imagine high-tech startups and they think of metropolitan cities. They think of, these people who have studied in premier institution, which is fair. But then they think of SC/ST and immediately it's like Stand-Up India, where we are giving 1 lakh rupees loan to buy a buffalo. The problem is, if you can't think of them as becoming high-tech entrepreneurs, it's really not going to happen. Like, in order for you to sort of implement something, you need to start from somewhere. And I think some state governments have done really well. Like, I was pleasantly surprised that Bihar, obviously, they support women entrepreneurs. They give an extra amount of money. In Assam, they had a special now I don't know which government was it, but they had special support for transgender entrepreneurs. And I think that is remarkably progressive. But this is essentially, I don't know how many people agree with me. I think every time you talk about India, I think people should give up. And I tell this to my colleagues who are doing research in especially US-based universities. I'm like, give up the idea of, work on states. It's important. That country is too big to, have a macro overview of everything. It's, and again, the suggestion that came, like what I have learned, if you really want to have a good publication, just chase the companies that you've shortlisted, just chase them. And, I can guarantee you the stories that you will uncover, everyone will be interested to read them. I tend to speak a lot, but whoever the person is, I'm going to look up Samriddhi scheme. I'm delighted. I will be delighted if the union government they have thought about this. It's a great step.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Anish. So I don't think we have any question posed by the audience. So let's move towards closing the session. And so with this, we come to the end of today's session, and I'm sure it has been a very engaging and insightful discussion for all of us. And most importantly, some very important comments and suggestions have been received by our presenter, Dr. Sanjay, who may like to incorporate some or all points raised today to further develop his paper and strengthen his argument. I extend my thanks again to Dr. Sanjay for this very interesting presentation on a very relevant issue. Special thanks to all our distinguished panelists for sparing their time and sharing their views on a very fresh research work connecting the startups and the Industry 4.0 technology. Special thanks to the member of audience for participating in the discussion today. And we hope that you all will continue to intellectually engage with ISID in our future research seminars. So here's a goodbye from ISID and a very good evening to all. Happy weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice
Bye.
weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.